Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lora Rolling and this is part 18 of the Merry Christmas Ornament tutorial. This is the Merry Christmas ornament that we are making. It is so cute and colorful. I love all its little lights. And today we're going to be making the unit called Top Lights C. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 17 yet, that's okay. You can do these out of order. I'll have those videos listed down below in the description. That way when you finish this one, you can go back and watch those. We just have a few materials to get ready, so let's get them listed and then we can get started. Let's go. So the beads that we're going to be using in today's video are all Miyuki Delicas. I have opaque black, silver lined green, opaque yellow AB, purple lined crystal, and silver lined light blue. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to call this black, green, yellow, purple, and blue. We'll also need some beading thread and a beading needle. I like to use the Eslon Fire in the color Crystal, and then this is 4-pound thread. You could also use a 6-pound thread if that's what you like. And then I like to use a size 10 beading needle. If all you have is an 11 or a 12, that would work too. For implements, I like to hold on to my thread at the end of the video with my long nose pliers, and then I cut my thread with scissors. And then today I'm going to show you how I use the fire method to end the tail. We just need to thread our needle with about 3 feet of thread, and then we can get started. So I've threaded my needle and now I'm ready to pick up my first 3 beads. Let's pick up 3 black beads. And now I'm going to take these beads and pull them down to the bottom of my thread, leaving about a 6-inch tail. Now let's make a square knot. So that means we cross over on top and then we pull our tail through. And then we cross over on top again and pull the tail through. So now we have 2 loops. I'm going to put my 2 fingers in the lower loop, the one that has the beads in it, and then I'm going to pull on the tail thread and the long thread until that top loop turns into a knot. Now I'm going to take my lighter. I'm not going to touch the flame to the thread, but I am going to get super close so that it melts the tip. Just like that, and it turns it into a teensy little knot. Now let's take our fingers and put them back in the loop. And while I'm pulling on the long thread, I'm going to twist the loop until that knot at the tail meets the long thread. Now I'm going to take my thumbnail and I'm going to pull that knot down to the 3 beads. And it's going to turn these beads into a little triangle. And that completes row number 1. So the knot looks like it's kind of edging towards this bead. It might be in the center of the 2 beads. Go ahead and pull on the tail until that knot looks like it's coming out of one of the beads. Now it also looks like that thread is coming out of that bead. So what we're going to do now is just pick up 2 more black beads. And we're coming out of this bead, well, it looks like we are, and we're going to sew through the bead that we're not coming out of, the one that's furthest away from that knot. And then I'm going to try to get the beads to sit right on top of each other, just like that. Now let's pick up 2 more black beads, and our thread is coming out of this bead, so let's sew through the next bead. And once again, try to get those beads to sit right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 2 more black beads, and we're coming out of this bead. Let's sew through the next bead, and we'll also sew through the one right below it. So we're sewing through 2 beads, and each time we sew through the last 2 beads like this, that means that we are stepping up and putting our thread in position to start the next row. So that means that we've completed row number 2, and we're ready to start row number 3. Let's start by picking up 2 black beads and sew through the next. And now let's pick up 1 black bead. And you'll see that we're coming out of this second bead right here, and then the third bead's kind of set downward. We're going to skip the downward bead, and then we're going to sew through the one that's poking up. I'm going to refer to that as the up bead. And we're sewing through all up beads. So let's pick up 2 black beads and then sew through the next. Now let's pick up 1 black, and skipping the down bead, we're going to sew through the up bead. Let's pick up 2 black beads and sew through the next. And we'll pick up 1, excuse me, 1 black bead. And this is our last bead in this row. We're going to skip the down bead and sew through the up bead. And then we're also going to sew through the bead right below that one. Sewing through the last 2 beads means that we are finished with this row and we are ready to start row number 4. Let's start by picking up 2 black beads and sew through the next. One black and sew through the up bead. 1 black and sew through the up bead. 2 black beads and sew through the next. 1 black and sew through the up. 1 black and sew through the up. 2 black beads and sew through the next. 1 black and sew through the up. And 1 black and sew through the up bead and the bead below it. Sewing through those last 2 beads means we are ready to start row number 5. Let's start with 2 black beads and sew through the next. 1 black then one black, one black, one purple bead, and one green bead this time. One black, one black, one black, one black, and one yellow. One black, one black, and one black. Sewing through those last two beads. And now we get to start row number 6. Let's start with 2 black beads, one black, one black, one black, one purple, one purple, and one black, one green, one black, one green, one green, one green, and one yellow, one yellow, one black, one black, one black, and sew through the last 2 beads. Now we get to start row number 7. Let's start with 2 black beads, one black, one black, one black, one black, one purple, two black, one black, one green, one green, one green, 1 green, 2 black beads, 1 yellow, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, and 1 black. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now you'll notice that we are at the top of our triangle. So since this is the top of our triangle, but we still have rows to add on the sides, what we're going to do is sew through the next bead without picking up any new beads. And that will put our thread in position to start row number 8. Let's start by adding 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, oops, 1 purple, 1 purple, 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 black, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 2 black beads, 1 yellow, 1 yellow, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, and 1 black. And now we are back up at the top of our triangle. So now what we're going to do is just turn our triangle over. And now we can sew down the side, starting row number 9 with 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 yellow, 1 green, 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 blue, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 black, 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 purple, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, and 1 black. And if you'll notice, we don't have an up bead to sew through right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew down the top bead right there. And then we're going to manipulate our new bead so that it sits right in place. Now let's sew down the bead that is right below the one we're coming out of. And then we will sew up the bead right next to that one. Then we'll sew up that first bead again and down the new bead that we just added. That's our little turnaround. So now we're going to turn our triangle back over, and now we can start sewing down this row for starting row 10. Let's start with 1 black bead, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 green, 1 black, 1 black, 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 1 black, one black, one black, one black, one black, and one black. And once again, we are up at the top of our triangle, so let's turn it over so that we can continue sewing down this side, which will start row 11. Let's start it with one black bead, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one green, one black, two black beads, one black, one black, one black, one black, one blue, one blue, one black, one black, one black, two black beads, one black, 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 and one black. And once again, there's no up bead to sew through, so we're going to have to do that turnaround. So let's sew down that first bead on the top row, and then make sure that our new bead sits in the right position. And now let's sew down the middle bead in the second row. Then we will sew up the bead right next to that one. And then sew up that top middle bead. And then sew down the new bead that we just added. And turn our triangle over And now we are ready to start row number 12. Let's start by picking up one black, one black, one black, one black, one green, one black, one black, one black, two black beads, one black, one black, one black, one black, one blue, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, two black beads, one black, 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 and one black. And that completes our 12 rows of our triangle. Let's turn it over. And now we get to start adding our connection rows or our connection beads. If this is the first triangle that you've done with me, I add connecting beads to some of the sides of each triangle, and then other triangles have different sides that they have the beads on. So in this particular triangle, we're going to add beads on the right side and on the bottom, but we're not going to add any on the left side. So let's start by adding one black bead. And these beads that we're adding are so that our units can connect together so that we can complete the project. One black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one green, one black, and one black. Now we're at the corner. We're going to cap this corner, turning it into a point by adding one black bead, And now we're going to add black beads all the way down on the bottom side. So I'll call them out for you. 1 black, 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 and 1 black. And now we are at our last corner. Let's cap it with 1 black bead, turning it into a point. And now I'm going to turn my triangle over again. And what we're going to do to secure these beads that we just put on is we're going to sew up 6 beads without picking up any new ones. We're just hiding our thread and sewing up. I like to sew up 1 bead per row up this quadrant line, but as long as you're sewing up 1 bead per row, that should hide your thread. And so you can pick any bead that you want as long as you're hiding your thread. Alrighty, so I've sewed up 6 beads. Now I'm coming out of the top of this purple bead. I'm going to sew down the bead right next to it. And then I'm going to sew up the bead right next to that one. So we're doing a little zigzag, which makes these beads a little more secure. Now let's sew up 2 beads or 2 rows, 1 and 2, and then we'll do that again, the same zigzag. We're coming out of the top of this green bead. Let's sew down the purple bead right next to it, and then up the purple bead right next to that one, and then sew up 2 more rows, 1 and 2. Now I feel extra secure that these beads are not going to fall off or get loose. So now it's time to cut our thread. So grabbing our thread with our long nose pliers and then cutting our thread or getting our scissors as close to the bead as possible before we cut, and then we cut it. Now we've completed our unit and we only need 1 of these for this project, so I will see you in a second. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here with me today and beading along with me. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you're notified when the next video comes out. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks for watching.